All right, welcome back. Here we're going to continue our thoughts on finishing up this quest that I gave and talking about conic sections. In this one, we're going to talk about the ellipse. This is question number 6 on a quest that I gave in my class. But talk about ellipse and how to find the equation of ellipse. Now, to find the equation of ellipse, there's some key things you want to know. All right. The first thing is you want to figure out what the center is. Okay. All right. In order to put this in standard form of the equation of ellipse. The next thing is what we're going to do is we have to figure out what A is, and we got to figure out what B is, because the A value, all right, is important because that comes from the vertices. All right, but in our equation, let me actually write those out. Standard form equation: x minus h squared, all right, over a squared plus y minus k squared over b squared equals 1 if it's going to be horizontal. Or we have one which is vertical, which would be where the a is going to be underneath the y's. So you would have x minus h squared over b squared, all right, plus y minus k squared over a squared. Now that can be very confusing to students when they're first doing this, and that says vertical, by the way. And the reason why is because they look very similar, but there are some big striking differences between them. Okay, the center is the h and k. The A is the distance from the vertices, so it's important you know what the vertices are. The B is from the minor axis, okay? And then what you have is, possibly if you need it, we have an extra thing of C, which we know comes from the foci. Okay, distance from the foci. Now, in doing this, the center, all right, we can look at our thing right here. We can say find the equation of ellipse with the major axis of length of 2, major axis, length of 2 squared of 6. Now, in knowing that, the major axis length, when we talk about ellipse, all right, is the major axis, depending on whatever kind of equation, all right, is when you have an ellipse, and this is a vertical ellipse. I'm just writing it that way. All right, the major axis comes from one vertice to the other vertice. Okay, so major axis actually helps us find the a value because it's the distance from one vertice to the other vertice. Okay, so the major axis is helping us find the a values. Now, how do we figure that out? Well, the vertices are directly, all right, or the center, I should say, is directly in the middle of the vertices. So the distance from here to here is a, distance from here to here is a, it splits it in 2. So the total distance is going to equal 2a. So in order to figure out what a is, we're going to take the total major axis length, 2 squared root of 6, and that has to equal 2a. Well, if that is true, then a has to equal the square root of 6. And then a squared has to equal 6 itself. So we already found one of the things. We already found that, all right, a squared equals 6. Cool, so we can plug that in. Now, the next thing is we got to figure out, do we have a horizontal or vertical ellipse? I drew a vertical one, but it might not be. Now, let's look at the other information and see what can help us out. Well, now we're given the foci. Okay, the foci is given right here. Now, the foci helps us find the c value, Now, it also can help us because the foci are also on the major axis. They're not the major, they're on the major axis. They're not actually the major axis length, but they are on the major axis. All right, the vertices, from one vertex to the other, because they're the ends, this actually is on the major axis, and it actually can tell the length of the major axis, and gives length of major too. Now, from here, both the vertices, minor, all right, points and the foci, all right, those are all equidistant from the center. Equidistant means the same distance. So what that means is that we can actually find the center by using the foci and find the midpoint. Now, how do you find the midpoint? Well, if you take the x values and add them together, so -3 plus -3, I'm taking that from here and here, and divide by 2, what we get is a value of -3, right? If we take this one, and these look really intimidating because you see the square root, but it shouldn't be that bad. We take the y values by taking 1 plus the square root of 5 plus 1 minus the square root of 5 divided by 2, and what we realize is that, oh, that's going to equal 1. So we actually find the center of -3, 1, -3, 1. So that is our center, and I'll put that up here. I'm going to get it right also. All right, so we find this is going to equal -3, 1. Now, the other thing we notice is that the foci can help us find the major axis. Since they're on the major axis, how are these changing? Well, notice how our y values are changing. Since our y values are changing, that means it must be going up and down. So we're starting at -3, 1. And then we're going up square root of 5. So wherever that is, square root of 5. And we're going down square root of 5. Okay? So that means right there, well, guess what? We just found our c value. Our c value, since it went up and down, our c value has to be the square root of 5 because that's the distance from the foci to the center. Okay? And also we found out that it's going to be vertical. So using all that information, okay, that problem solving stuff, all right, we're going to fill in all of our information right here. So we have x minus, our x value of vertex will be +3 squared. We're going to have this right here, so that would be over b squared. We're going to have y minus 1 squared. That's going to be over a squared. Well, a, we found out was, or a squared is equal to 6, and that equals 1. Don't forget your 1. Now the last thing is we got to figure out what is, all right, b squared. Well, we're not given the minor axis, we're not given this stuff, but we are given, all right, we know a now, all right, and we know b now, okay? Or sorry, not b, c. Well, since we know a and b, or a and c, we can use this equation. All right, and I kind of had a lot of different stuff. I'm going to erase some of these things. I apologize. All right, but we're going to use the equation to help us figure out what b is we're going to take a squared minus b squared equals c squared. So what is a squared? Well, a squared is 6 minus b squared, which we're trying to find, equals c squared. Well, c squared, since c is square root of 5, we're going to have that equaling 5, because we have the square root. We now solve this. We have -1 equals negative b squared, and b squared equals 1. And now we take that, and we plug it in. Or we could just leave nothing there, but that's our equation of our ellipse. So what do? Have to find the center, all right? Because we need, that's one of the key things in order to find the horizontal. Have to find the center, A and B. Using the information we have, we realize the major axis helps us find the A value. After we found the A value, all right, we then realized we had the focus. The foci helped us identify what the C value was. They also helped us find the center, if you recall, helped us find the center because the center is the midpoint between the foci. All right, center is the midpoint between the foci, vertices, and the minor axis. So it helped us find the center. We also used the foci because it told us what was going to be the, all right, major axis. And it was vertical because the y was changing. Using that information, we plugged it in, and then used our final equation, all right, a squared minus b squared equals c squared, to help us find b squared by using all the information we have. This is a very long process, okay? It can be a long process. However, it's not difficult if you just kind of break it down into different parts and use the information and are very knowledgeable about the information you're given and how it can be used to help fill in the blanks into these equations. Well, I hope that helps you, all right, on your future problems, so good luck and God bless.